Let's play Dungeons and Dragons.
Hey everybody, Matt Bickel here, and today I want to talk to you about action economy in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, what is action economy? Well, it's a big fancy term for basically keeping track of how many actions and how much movement you as a character can take in one turn, and how much movement and how many actions your whole party can take in one turn, and how much movement and actions does the bad guy team have in a turn, and then contrasting that and comparing it and trying to see who has an advantage. For example, if there are 4 of you in your party and 8 bad guys, well, then they have an advantage in the action economy because they can move 8 times as opposed to your team only moving 4 times. And they can take 8 actions as opposed to your team only taking 4 actions. And this also goes for bonus actions and reactions. They have more opportunity to take those things. So they have on their face a advantage in action economy. Now, action economy isn't everything. Just because one side has a higher amount of actions and movements they can take in a single round of combat doesn't mean that they're going to win, but it is something to watch out for because it is very, very useful. And if you're disadvantaged in the action economy, you definitely want to do something to try to mitigate that disadvantage. And if you are at a place of advantage in action economy, then you definitely want to manage that wisely so that that advantage doesn't escape your grasp too quickly. And hopefully you can use it to seal things up really quick and secure victory in combat. So this whole topic is pretty metagaming, but we all know that we are playing a game. Dungeons and Dragons is a game. We love to forget that we're playing a game when we're at the table because we want to immerse ourselves in the world that the Dungeon Master is providing for us all. We want to immerse ourselves in this world that all the players are building this story and all adventuring in together. We want to forget that it's a game and be immersed in it fully, but it is a game. And there are rules that confine us a little bit. There is a boundary and a framework that we have to play in. 5th edition is very good at trusting the Dungeon Master and the players to make rulings and calls and be able to make snap decisions in the moment. But there's still some framework, there's still some rules that we all need to be mindful of. And this is one area that we can all kind of pay attention to, and hopefully it'll help you and your party be even more successful in combat and be able to take on these bad guys with greater success. And hopefully no one gets killed. But it could happen. That being said, yeah, action economy is just a mechanic by which we measure and contrast actions and movements from the different groups that are present in a combat encounter. So, and oh, by the way, quick point. Most campaigns are built in a balanced fashion. And what I mean by that is that if you're a first level party just starting out, you're probably not going to encounter something that's overly powerful like a dragon. And if you're a 10th level party, you're probably not going to encounter something that's really, really wimpy like kobolds. But it could happen, so it's something just to be mindful of, I suppose. Most of the campaigns that are written by wizards or that you'll find in the DM's Guild are pretty balanced, so you're not going to run into anything that's just ridiculous. You'll probably have encounters that are easy, medium, hard, maybe even fatal, but they're not going to be so ridiculously out of proportion that they're impossible for you to win. Some might be more difficult than others, though. Some might be very difficult. Now, there are campaigns, there are stories that are written that are built on purpose to be very, very, very difficult to beat, maybe even impossible, where part of the goal is actually for the entire party to be killed. That's okay. They can be a lot of fun. They're usually really, really funny because you can just be relaxed. Everyone knows that, hey, we're going to get killed and it's going to be ridiculously ugly and it's going to be horrible and it's a hoot. But usually those things are spelled out ahead of time. That way you're not invested in the idea that this is going to be a long, balanced campaign that you can sink your teeth into for a long term. Usually those games last a little bit, not quite as long, but a balanced game that's written, maybe even one that's not quite balanced, just a little bit more on the challenging side. You're not going to face anything that's overwhelming where action economy doesn't even matter because you're going to lose regardless. But in a balanced game, especially the campaigns that are written by wizards, they're pretty balanced, pretty even. And so managing action economy can be one way that you and your party can gain an advantage or at least mitigate the disadvantage that you guys have. So let's talk about some scenarios. Let's say that you and your party are put in a 12-on-4 situation. There's 4 of you and 12 bad guys. Chances are most of those 12 bad guys are not going to be as powerful as you and your party members are. Chances are maybe one or two of them will be as powerful or more powerful, but most of those guys are going to be something like minions, that are a little bit easier for you to take care of. Now, that being said, they do have an action economy advantage. There's 12 of them and 4 of you. You can only move 4 times. You can only take 4 actions as a team. They can move 12 times and take 12 actions as a team. And then, of course, bonus actions and reactions will just pile on top of that even more. Something really to be careful of. So what you can do as a party to try to mitigate that action economy disadvantage that you're placed in by the greater numbers is just trying to target some bad guys. If, maybe my player character can't take out one of these bad guys in one turn, but maybe me and one other person can. We can work together to kill one, and now it's 4 versus 11, which is still pretty unbalanced as far as action economy is concerned, but it's not as bad as 12 versus 4. And maybe my 2 other friends in my party can take out a guy. Now it's 10 versus 4. And then over a few rounds, action economy can be leveled out more and more and more until it's very fair action economy wise. And if these bad guys aren't even as powerful as us in the party, then we're at a distinct advantage because action economy's been evened out, but we're also just on ourselves more powerful. Now, that being said, if there is 1 or 2 of these 12 bad guys that you encounter that is more powerful, maybe a spellcaster that's doing area of effect spells, or a boss monster that's just running around and just destroying things, well, maybe it's good to gang up on that person and focus on them. That way the entire group of 12 isn't being bolstered by their efforts. So those are things to look out for that can hopefully mitigate the disadvantage, the action economy disadvantage that you and the party are put in a 12 versus 4 scenario. Now, let's flip the script completely. You and your party encounter a boss monster. So it's 4 versus 1. You 4 versus 1 monster. It looks like you guys have the action economy advantage, but don't be so quick to judge that. Even in a first level party scenario, most boss monsters are written in such a way to try to mitigate the disadvantage, action economy disadvantage that the DM and his monsters are put in, his or her monsters are put in. So even in the case of a bugbear, they'll have multi-attack oftentimes, which most player characters don't get until level 5 if you're a martial class. This is a big deal because if they're hitting really hard, there's a chance that bugbear can go bang, bang. If they hit both times, knock a player character unconscious in 1 round of combat. That's a big deal for a first level party. And even when you start getting into higher level monsters like a dragon, let's say, they even though your party is probably 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe 10th level, maybe even higher. So you and your party have all sorts of cool abilities and extra attack and other features that you and your party have earned with all your experience in traveling and adventuring. This dragon probably not only has extra attack where it'll attack 2 or 3 times in a turn, have a breath weapon, but it'll also probably have really high movement, flying, and all those things, which make it more difficult to manage. But it'll probably have legendary actions that it can just take every round of combat, that it just gets to do more things than a regular monster or player character can do. And then it probably has legendary reactions, so it can have more reactions in a single round of combat than most player characters or monsters can take. In addition to that, chances are, if you're fighting this boss monster in its lair, that its lair itself will have actions and things that happen based on maybe the initiative count or a certain thing happen being triggered by the monster or by our player character's action. Ultimately, this amounts to the dragon or another boss monster that you might be fighting having an equal or maybe an advantage in the action economy, when you work it all out in contrast to numbers. So be aware of that and be careful. So what can you do as a party when you're faced with a boss monster and it's one monster, but the action economy still isn't really in your advantage? Well, a couple things you can do. Number 1, try not to group up unless it's absolutely necessary, because especially in the case of a dragon or other high-level boss monsters, a lot of them have an area of effect spell. And so trying to keep only 1 or 2 guys affected by the spell at any given time, or the breath weapon or whatever it happens to be, is really good. Hopefully it's just 1, where the rest of you guys can keep ganging up on the monster and support the one guy who unfortunately got fire breathed upon them or acid gushed upon them or something. Another great thing that you can do is trying to, Coordinate your movements and attacks to try to debuff the monster and buff your teammates, and then flank it. Hopefully, be able to use your numbers, because even though the dragon or other boss monster might not have an action economy disadvantage, you still have numbers on that monster. You still can gang up, hopefully gain advantage by flanking, and just have multiple different effects going on that will work in your favor. So try to manage the abilities that you have as a party to take on that big bad boss monster. Lastly, this might be the most interesting, least predictable circumstance. If you and your team are put in a scenario where the action economy is truly equal, and the action economy is truly equal because you're facing a group of bad guys that are pretty much your party's equals. If it's 4-on-4 and you're facing 4 guys or 4 gals or any combination that are similarly powerful to your group, well, then it's kind of hard to determine what to do. Do we gang up on one? Do we just go man-to-man combat? How are we going to manage this? Well, a couple things to look out for is there a spellcaster? That's always something to look for. Is there a spellcaster that is doing area of effect, whether it's buffing their teammates, debuffing you and your teammates, doing a big fireball or some other kind of area effect spell, cloud kill? Who knows? That might be a person to focus on. Or if any one of them kind of separates from the rest of the group, well, then you guys can just try to sandwich that guy and hopefully kill him off really quickly, and then giving yourselves the action economy advantage. Because if you can kill one of those 4, suddenly it goes to 4-on-3. And if all things are equal as far as the comparison of you against this other party's abilities, having that 4-on-3 advantage can be massive. So ganging up can still be useful, but bear in mind, if you start ganging up on one guy, then there's 3 over here that can kind of come in, rain on there, and then you're just gonna have this big nasty cluster. Or who knows, maybe they'll even do a dirty thing and sacrifice their 1, because now you're all ganged up, their area effect caster just goes boom, and they sacrifice 1, but maybe they hurt all of your party in the process. Who knows? Something to look out for, and just be careful. It's interesting. Combat is always interesting. It's always dynamic. It's one of the best parts of Dungeons & Dragons, which is why it is one of the 3 major pillars in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We'll probably talk about the pillars of Dungeons & Dragons in a different video, because there are 3. It's a pretty cool subject, and it's kind of part of the heritage and lore of the game. So I don't know, we'll talk about that in a future video, but this has been the Action Economy video. Thanks so much for watching. As always, take care, have fun, and may the dice always roll in your favor. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. That way you don't miss a single video. Also, if you have any thoughts about today's video or have an idea for a future video, please comment below. Thanks again. Take care. We'll see you next time. So, as you enter the cave, the already humid air takes on an extra moist and pungent mildewy smell. Looking to the left and to the right, your lantern barely illuminates the cave. You can't even see the cave walls or the ceiling above you. Suddenly, as you begin to walk further in, you feel a droplet on your head. A second droplet. You look up, and to your horror, you see a giant spider with webbing wrapped around its long, spiny legs descending from above toward you, attempting to scoop you up into its grasp. Roll a dexterity saving throw.